There are things you never expect your own mother to lie about, and then there are the things she denies so intensely that you start to question your own memory. But nothing prepared me for the moment. I showed her the video, the same video she spent years insisting didn't exist, and watched every trace of color drain from her face. For as long as I can remember, she said that night never happened, that I was confused, that I misremembered things like all kids do. She repeated it so many times, I started to believe her, even though something inside me always felt twisted, unfinished. Then, by complete accident, I found the old phone tucked in a box in the attic, still charged enough to turn on. And there it was. The video, the proof, her voice, her actions. The moment that changed everything for me, when I pressed play and she heard herself, her expression didn't show confusion, it showed fear. Not of the video itself, but of me knowing the truth. When she whispered, "You weren't supposed to keep that," I realized this wasn't about a forgotten memory. This was about a secret she needed, buried. Families rewrite history all the time. Sometimes it's harmless small details smoothed over to make stories funnier or simpler. But sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes it's a way to hide something painful, embarrassing, or damaging. My mom always insisted that one particular night from my childhood never happened. She corrected me every time I brought it up, shut me down if I asked questions, and even told relatives I had an overactive imagination. Eventually, I stopped mentioning it. But when I found that old phone with the video, the one she swore I never recorded, all those memories came back in a tidal wave I couldn't ignore. Her reaction when I showed it to her didn't feel like a misunderstanding. It felt like exposure. Before I tell you exactly what was in the video, why she denied it for so long, and what happened after I pressed play in front of her, make sure you subscribe to the Conflict Corner. This is where we uncover the stories families try to erase and the truths that refuse to disappear. No matter how hard someone tries to bury them, I never meant to find the video. That's the part I keep coming back to. It wasn't something I was searching for, or digging toward, or hoping to uncover. It just appeared, like a bruise you don't remember getting but suddenly hurts every time you move. I was cleaning out the attic because my mom asked me to help her clear space for storage tubs. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, nothing dramatic, nothing emotional. Dusty boxers, old holiday decorations, broken toys, the usual forgotten things. Families keep long after they stop mattering. One of the boxers was heavier than the others, an old shoebox with tape yellowed from age. The handwriting on the lid was mine, from when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. I laughed at first, expecting to find old school drawings or maybe birthday cards. But inside were random items from years I barely remembered. A plastic keychain, a small flashlight, a few coins, and an old phone. Not a smartphone one of those early touchscreen models that barely held battery after a year of use. I shouldn't have expected it to turn on, but when I pressed the button, the screen flickered. A faded home screen appeared, and for a moment I felt this strange punch of nostalgia in my chest. I started scrolling through the gallery. Most of the pictures were blurry or taken by a kid who didn't know how to hold a camera still. But then there was a video thumbnail that made my stomach twist before I even played it. The timestamp read a date I recognized immediately, not because of the number itself, but because of what my mom had always told me about that night. She said it never happened. She said I had made it up. She said I was confused and too young to remember things correctly. I stared at the thumbnail for a long time. I don't know why. Maybe part of me already knew what was on it. Maybe part of me didn't want to know, but I pressed play anyway. The first thing I heard was her voice. My mom's voice, unmistakable, even with the static of the low-quality microphone. Her tone wasn't kind. It wasn't patient. It wasn't remotely like the mom who now insists she has always been gentle, always calm, always composed. She was yelling. Not screaming, but that sharp, controlled yelling, like she wanted to sound quieter than she actually was, but couldn't manage it. My younger self was the one holding the phone. The camera was shaky, pointed at the floor for most of the video, but her voice was crystal clear. She said things I hadn't remembered word for word, but the feeling of them came back instantly, cold and cutting. There was a crash in the background, and the voice of someone else, though I couldn't identify who. A door slammed. My mother's voice dropped to a whisper, so tense it almost sounded like she was shaking. When the video ended, I sat absolutely still, staring at the screen like it might play another clip on its own. I didn't breathe for several seconds. Then the attic felt smaller, like the walls had shifted an inch closer. I knew immediately why she denied it. I understood the fear in her voice whenever I mentioned that night growing up, but hearing it again, hearing it as an adult, made it so much more real than the fragmented memory that had floated in my head for years. I put the phone in my pocket and went downstairs. My mom was in the kitchen, sorting containers and lids. She looked up at me and smiled like she was relieved I was still helping her. That smile faded the second I set the phone on the counter. "Do you remember this?" I asked. She froze. Not just surprise frozen, like someone pressed pause on her face. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then she shook her head quickly, too quickly. "Where did you get that?" "Upstairs. In one of my old boxers." Her eyes widened, and this time it wasn't fear, was alarm. "That shouldn't be here," she said. "I threw that out years ago." She reached for it, but I kept my hand on top of it. "Why did you lie?" I asked. Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked like she might try to brush it off again, like she'd say, I was remembering wrong. But then she whispered, "You should not have kept that. You should not have recorded that." I felt anger rise in me, slow but hot. "I was a kid," I said. "Why did you tell me that night never happened?" She didn't answer. Her gaze dropped to the counter, and her shoulders sank like the weight of something decades old had finally pressed down on her. "You don't understand," she said softly. "You weren't supposed to see that again." "Why?" I asked. "What were you trying to hide from me?" She took a step back, bumping into a cabinet. She looked smaller somehow, like the truth was shrinking her. "It wasn't about you," she whispered. "It was never about you." And then she walked out of the kitchen, leaving the phone on the counter between us like a bomb that still hadn't gone off. For the rest of the day, she avoided me. Doors closed gently but deliberately. No eye contact, no questions about dinner. Just silence thick and suffocating. That night, lying in my old bedroom, the video kept replaying in my head. Her voice, the crash, the whisper, and then something else, something I hadn't noticed the first time. A faint sound behind her voice, a second voice, a voice I recognized in a way that made my skin prickle. I got up, grabbed the phone again, and replayed the clip with the volume low. The second voice was male, older, familiar. It hit me like a punch. It was my dad. But my mom had always said he wasn't home that night. She had insisted he was working late. She had insisted I was mistaken about everything. Suddenly, her panic made sense. Her denial made sense. The rewriting of our family history made sense. It wasn't just one lie, it was two. And if both of them were involved in hiding it, then the truth might be bigger and darker than I ever expected. I lay awake until morning, listening to every sound in the house, wondering how many years of my life were built on a story someone else crafted for me. And now that I knew the truth existed on a shaky old video recorded by a scared kid, there was no way I could pretend anymore. No matter how much they wanted me to. The next morning felt heavier than it should have, like the air in the house had thickened overnight. I woke up before the sun, which wasn't something I ever did voluntarily, but my mind wouldn't let me sleep. My head was full of the video, full of that second voice, full of the realization that everything my mom had told me for years might have been deliberately crafted to keep me from remembering the truth. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, noticing the cracks in the paint I hadn't seen in years, noticing how it all still smelled faintly like the laundry detergent she had always used. I could hear her moving around the kitchen downstairs. Quiet movements, controlled movements. No clattering of pans, no humming like she usually did. Just footsteps. Slow, deliberate. When I finally went down, my dad was sitting at the table with a mug of coffee, one hand wrapped around it, staring at nothing. He didn't look at me when I walked in. He didn't say good morning. He didn't even nod. It was the kind of silence that wasn't accidental. My mom stood by the counter, Her back turned toward both of us, pretending to clean something even though the counter was spotless. The phone was gone. I didn't ask where she'd put it. I didn't need to. I already knew. You saw it, my dad said finally, his voice low and flat. I stood there for a moment, unsure whether he wanted an answer or was just confirming what he already knew. Yes, I said. He didn't nod, didn't look up. He just tightened his grip on the mug. That phone should not have been here, he said. It should have been thrown away a long time ago. You told me you didn't even know where it went, I said. Still nothing? My mom stopped wiping the counter, but she didn't turn around. We didn't think it would turn on, she said. It was an old device. We thought it was damaged. Why does it matter so much? I asked. Why did you lie about that night? Why did you both pretend it never happened? My dad finally lifted his eyes, and there was something in them I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not fear, something else. Regret maybe, or exhaustion, because it was easier, he said. For who? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. He looked at my mom, and she finally turned around, her face pale, her hands trembling just slightly. For all of us, she whispered, you were a child. You weren't supposed to see that. You weren't supposed to remember. But I did, I said. I remembered parts of it. I asked you about it, and you made me feel crazy. She winced at the word, but she didn't deny it. My dad took a long breath, like he was preparing to say something he'd been avoiding for years. You recorded us fighting, he said. We didn't want you to hold on to that memory. We didn't want it to define your childhood. That's not all that happened, I said quietly. It wasn't just a fight. The room went still again. My mom's jaw tightened, her eyes dropping to the floor. My dad didn't look away this time. No, he admitted. It wasn't just a fight. I didn't push right away. I wanted to hear them say it, but I also knew the more I demanded, the more they might retreat into that practiced silence they'd built their marriage on. So I sat down, keeping my eyes on them, waiting. My dad rubbed his forehead. We were going through something, he said. We thought we were hiding it from you. You weren't, I said. I heard everything. My mom closed her eyes. We know, she whispered. We know now. I felt this strange combination of vindication and sadness wash over me. I hadn't been imagining it. I hadn't been confused. I hadn't been wrong. But the truth wasn't satisfying. It was heavy. Heavy in a way that didn't offer closure only. More questions. Why did you tell me it never happened? I asked. Why go so far as to erase it? My mom looked up again, tears pooling in her eyes. Because you blamed yourself, she said. You were too young to understand why we were fighting. And you said things like, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to make you mad, and it broke me. It broke both of us. We wanted to protect you from carrying that memory into adulthood, so you rewrote it, I said. You made me doubt myself for years just so you could feel better about how you handled it. She flinched. My dad looked away. We thought it was best, he said. You thought lying was best, I corrected. The silence that followed was the kind that comes after truth lands hard, unforgiving, irreversible. My dad finally pushed back from the table. There's more you don't know, he said. About that night, my heart beat faster. Then tell me, I said. If you're done hiding things, tell me everything. He looked at my mom again, and she nodded, though she looked like she might collapse. My dad sighed. We weren't fighting about you, he said. We were fighting about us. I figured, I said. No, he said, not like that. We were fighting because your mom was thinking about leaving. That night was the breaking point. My mom shook her head quickly, wiping her eyes. I wasn't going to leave him, she said. I was overwhelmed. I was scared. I said things I didn't mean. You packed a bag, my dad said. You were halfway out the door. I stared at her. You were going to leave us. She shook her head harder. No, I wasn't. Her voice cracked. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt trapped, lost. And you recorded it, my dad said, looking at me again. You wanted proof that it wasn't your fault? You held the phone because you thought if you showed someone, they would stop yelling. My stomach twisted. I hadn't remembered that, not clearly, just the fear, the shaking, the sense that everything was falling apart around me. We lied because we didn't want you to carry that, my dad continued. We didn't want you thinking our marriage falling apart was something you needed to fix. But I remembered anyway. I said, I remembered enough. My mom nodded slowly. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. It should have made me feel something comfort, release, forgiveness. But instead, it left me feeling hollow, because the video wasn't just about their marriage. It wasn't just about a fight. There was something else in it, something they hadn't mentioned yet. The second voice? The part that had made my skin crawl. Who else was in the house that night? I asked. My parents both froze. My dad's face went still. My mom's breath stopped mid-inhale. What do you mean? My mom whispered. I heard a voice. I said, someone else was there. My dad swallowed hard, and it was the first time I'd ever seen fear in his eyes. We'll talk about that, he said, but not right now. Why not? I demanded. Because, he said quietly, once we start talking about that part, everything changes. And for the first time in my life, I realized my parents weren't protecting me from the past. They were protecting themselves from it, and from what it would mean if I knew everything. I didn't expect my dad to walk away from the conversation, but that's exactly what he did. He stood up from the table, set his mug down carefully like he was afraid it might shatter, and left the room without looking back. My mom followed him with her eyes, her expression torn between fear and exhaustion, but she didn't go after him. Instead, she leaned against the counter, gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles turned white. I remained where I was, staring at the doorway he disappeared through, waiting for someone to explain why the mere mention of a third voice in that video had stopped both of them cold. You shouldn't have brought that up, my mom whispered. Why? I asked. Because that part of the story isn't yours, she said. It never should have involved you. But it did, I said. You can't pretend I wasn't there. She closed her eyes. We tried to make sure you didn't remember. We thought if we could keep the memory buried long enough, it would fade. It didn't, I said. And now I need answers. My mom took a shaky breath, straightened her posture, and finally pushed herself away from the counter. Your dad won't talk about it, she said. Not yet, but I can at least tell you part of it. I waited. But she hesitated before speaking again, like the truth had to crawl out of her. The person you heard in the video, she said softly, was someone who shouldn't have been here. Someone your dad never wanted you to know about. A chill ran down my spine. She opened her mouth but stopped when footsteps echoed from the hallway. My dad returned, walking slower than before, holding something in his hand, a small metal tin I recognized from the attic. He set it on the table between us. If we're doing this, he said, voice low, we're doing it fully. My mom looked alarmed. Are you sure? It's too late not to be, he said, eyes flicking to me. He sat down again, and I followed, my heart pounding so loudly I could feel it in my fingertips. My dad opened the tin. Inside were papers folded so many times they looked like soft cloth. He pulled out one and flattened it on the table. It wasn't a letter, it wasn't a receipt, it was a photograph. A printed one, old enough that the colors had started to fade. In it, my dad stood outside our house with a man I didn't recognize. The man looked rough, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes tired. My dad looked younger, but also angrier, like he'd been caught in the middle of something he couldn't walk away from. This was taken the week before, that night. My dad said, I studied the picture, searching for familiarity, but nothing clicked. Who is he? I asked. My dad took a deep breath. Your uncle, he said. My brother. My heart skipped. I don't have an uncle, I said automatically. Yes, he said. You do, or you did. The room tilted slightly. My mom touched my arm, but I pulled away without meaning to. Why have you never mentioned him? I asked, voice cracking just a little. My dad stared at the picture with a heaviness that made me realize this wasn't just a forgotten relative. This was someone who had been deliberately erased. Because he was an addict, my dad said, because he stole from us, because he lied, manipulated, and disappeared for years at a time. And because the night you recorded that video, he came back. I felt the breath catch in my throat. He was in the house. He came to the door, my dad said. Your mom and I didn't want you near him. We didn't want you to even know he existed until he got clean, until it was safe. But that night, he was desperate. He needed money. He needed a place to stay, and we said no. My mom closed her eyes like the memory still hurt. He started shouting. She said quietly, your dad shouted back. That's what you heard. It wasn't about leaving the marriage. It wasn't about anything you thought it was, but you blamed yourselves, I said. You pretended it was your fight. My dad nodded slowly, because admitting the truth would mean admitting we failed him, and admitting we put you in danger, even if only for a few minutes. The room felt colder now. Even the sunlight through the window seemed muted. What happened to him? I asked. My dad looked at my mom, then back at me. He left that night, he said, and a few days later, he overdosed. My chest tightened. Not from grief. I didn't know this man, but from the weight of what my parents had carried alone. We didn't want that memory to shape your childhood, my mom said. We didn't want you to grow up knowing a version of your father that wasn't fair to him, or a version of our family that was broken, but it was broken, I said. Pretending it wasn't didn't make it whole. She nodded weakly, tears slipping down her face. My dad folded the photo again, slowly, carefully, like it was something fragile. We should have told you, he said. We should have let you decide how to remember it. I felt a strange mix of anger and empathy twisting inside me. They had lied to us, they had rewritten history, but they had also been grieving a brother, carrying guilt, trying to protect a child from a world that had blindsided them. Why didn't you at least tell me I had an uncle? I asked. Because my dad said I didn't want you growing up thinking addiction was a family curse, or that you were destined to repeat his mistakes. His voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then my mom stepped closer, sitting beside me. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. Something about the video. My stomach tightened again. What? Your uncle didn't just knock, she said. He tried to come in. My dad's jaw tightened. He wasn't in his right mind, he said. He wasn't dangerous. Not intentionally. But we didn't know that at the time. We reacted. We panicked. And I recorded it. I said, yes. My mom whispered. You filmed everything. And when we realized it, that's when we decided the video needed to disappear. Not because of what happened, my dad said, but because of how we behaved, how we yelled, how we let you see us at our worst. I looked at both of them, seeing not just my parents not, just the people who had raised me but to flawed. Frightened adults who had been overwhelmed by a moment they didn't know how to handle. And the reason you denied it for years? I asked. Because, my mom said softly, we hoped you would forget, but I didn't. I said. She nodded. I know. And that's why we're telling you the truth now. My dad's voice softened. We can't change what happened, but we can stop lying about it. I didn't know what to say. The truth didn't feel like closure. It felt like a door opening into a hallway I hadn't walked down yet. A hallway where my family wasn't as simple or strong or clean as I'd once believed. But it was real. And maybe real was better than perfect. I want to see the video again, I said. My mom inhaled sharply. My dad leaned back in his chair, the tension in his shoulders tightening again. Are you sure? He asked. Yes, I said. This time, I want to see everything. My parents looked at each other. My mom nodded first. My dad hesitated, then nodded too. Whatever the video showed, whatever version of them it exposed, I knew watching it again would change things. But I also knew one thing for certain. I was done living inside a story someone else wrote for me. I didn't watch the video again that day. I thought I would die, thought I was ready, but after hearing everything my parents told me, my mind wasn't steady enough to face it again. Instead, I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, trying to sort memories that weren't really memories anymore, just fragments of feelings. The coldness of fear, the ringing in my ears from raised voices, the confusion of being too young to understand why adults fell apart in front of me. I didn't know if I wanted the truth or if I wanted my childhood back. But childhood wasn't something you could reclaim not after realizing. Parts of it were built on a foundation someone else poured for you, smoothed over and repainted until the cracks were invisible. Eventually, I heard footsteps outside my door. My dad knocked softly, not opening it until I said he could. He stepped in, holding the old phone carefully, as if it were a piece of evidence in a case he wasn't ready to argue. "We transferred the video to a flash drive," he said quietly. The phone kept glitching, the batteries almost dead. He held out the drive, but I didn't take it right away. "Why did you keep it?" I asked. "Why didn't you destroy it after everything?" He sat on the chair in the corner, shoulders slumping. "Because part of me hoped I'd be brave enough to tell you someday," he said. "I never was." And after a while, destroying it felt like another lie on top of the first one. I looked at the drive, feeling an uncomfortable pressure build in my chest. "I need to see it," I said, "but not alone." He nodded, understanding more than I expected. "Your mom isn't ready to watch it again," he said. "She won't admit it, but she's scared. Not of the video, of what you'll think of her when you see it from start to finish." I hesitated, thinking about the mother who raised me, the woman who held me when I cried, the one who pretended to be composed and gentle while hiding a night she wished had never happened. "I won't hate her," I said. "I just need to understand." My dad nodded again. "Then come downstairs when you're ready." He left the drive on the bed beside me and stepped out of the room. When the door closed, I stared at that tiny object, realizing something strange. The truth wasn't heavy. The truth was small, light, contained. It was the lies around it that weighed me down. After a long time, I picked up the drive and went downstairs. My dad had hooked up an old laptop to the TV, a quiet living room illuminated by the glow of the paused screen. My mom wasn't there. I didn't ask where she was. I wasn't sure I wanted her sitting beside me while I peeled back the layers of something she had tried so hard to bury. My dad looked at me with an expression that was both apologetic and resigned. "Whenever you're ready," he said. I sat on the couch, took a breath that didn't feel like enough, and nodded. He pressed play. The video opened the same way it had the first time. Shaky, blurry. The camera pointed at the floor where my small hands held it too tightly. I could hear my own breathing, quick, uneven, frightened. Then her voice came in, sharp and trembling. My mom was yelling, but not the way she yelled when she was angry. It was the kind of yelling that tries to hold something bigger back. Fear or panic or desperation. "You can't be here," she said in the video. "Not tonight. Not like this." My dad's voice followed, louder. "You need to leave. This isn't the place. You're not in a state to be here." A third voice entered, my uncle's voice. Hearing it for the first time, knowing who it belonged to, made something knot in my stomach. He sounded erratic, but there was pain under it. Not just the pain of addiction, the pain of someone who had run out of places to go. "I just need a bed," he said. One night, Mike. I'm your brother." "Not when you're like this," my dad responded. There was a thump. Then the camera jostled. I remembered that feeling, the panic of thinking something terrible was about to happen, and holding the phone tighter because it was the only thing I could control. My uncle shouted something unintelligible, and then came the part I didn't fully remember. My mom cried out, not in anger, but in fear. She wasn't yelling at my dad. She was trying to keep my uncle from entering the house. "You need help," she said. "Not us. Not tonight. Please." My dad stepped into frame for a moment, his younger self, tired and angry, trying to push his brother back. "Don't make me call the police," he warned. My uncle laughed in a hollow, broken way. "I've been through worse than cops," he said. "You think I'm scared of them?" Another loud noise made my younger self gasp behind the camera. For several seconds, the phone tilted upward, showing blurry shapes, shadows, movement. Then, for a brief moment, the camera steadied enough to capture my uncle's face. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, his cheeks sunken, his mouth pulled tight like he was trying to hold himself together and failing. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. Enough to see the devastation in him. Enough to understand why my parents didn't want me to remember. Enough to know he wasn't a monster, just a man drowning with no one left to hold on to. The camera dropped again just as my dad slammed the door shut. My uncle kept shouting from outside, his voice cracking, breaking, fading. "Please," he begged. "Please, don't leave me out here." My mom sobbed quietly. My dad locked the door with shaking hands. Then the video ended. The room was silent for a long time. My dad kept his eyes on the floor, breathing slowly, as if each inhale hurt. I sat there, unable to speak. My heart twisted into a shape I didn't have a name for. "That's why we hid it," my dad said quietly. "Not because we were ashamed of yelling. Not because we wanted to pretend we were perfect parents. We hid it because you were too young to see someone in that much pain. Too young to know your uncle's story ended the way it did." I swallowed hard. "But you let me think I imagined it. You made me feel like I couldn't trust my own memory." He nodded without defending himself. "We were wrong." My mom appeared in the doorway, then, silent tears streaking her face. "We should have told you when you were older," she said. But by then, the lie had already been told for so long that telling the truth felt impossible. I didn't hate them. Oddly, I wasn't even angry anymore. What I felt was grief for my uncle, for my parents, for myself as a child, clutching a phone while the adults around me struggled with a world that didn't make sense. "I wish you had trusted me," I said softly. "I wish you believed I could handle the truth." My mom stepped into the living room, her hands trembling. "We didn't trust ourselves," she said. "That was the problem." My dad looked at me then, not as a father trying to explain himself, but as a man asking for forgiveness he might never deserve. "What do you want to do now?" he asked. I didn't know. Not yet. But I knew one thing. The truth didn't break my family. The silence did. And now that the silence was gone, I wasn't sure what would come next. For the rest of that day, the house felt like a place where every wall had just learned a new secret and didn't know what to do with it. No one moved much. No one spoke unless they had to. My mom stayed in the kitchen for hours, cleaning things that were already clean, wiping the same counter over and over like she could erase the past with circular motions. My dad retreated to the garage, the place he always went when something weighed too heavily on him. And I walked around the house like a ghost, noticing details I'd never paid attention to: family photos on the walls, framed memories that now felt incomplete, moments frozen while the truth sat hidden behind them like a stain no one wanted to acknowledge. It was strange, realizing that the people you trusted most were capable of rewriting the narrative of your life. It wasn't that they were malicious. It wasn't that they wanted to hurt me. But lies, even protective ones, reshape you in ways you don't notice until someone pulls back the curtain. And now, the curtain wasn't just pulled back, it was ripped open. I ended up outside on the porch, sitting on the steps, letting the cool afternoon air settle the whirlwind inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the way I had been. The anger had burned off and left something else behind, something quieter and deeper. Like standing in the debris of a storm and wondering how long it would take to rebuild anything. After a while, my dad stepped outside and joined me. He didn't sit too close, just enough to show he wanted to be there without assuming he deserved the space. For a long time, neither of us spoke. He stared at the yard. I stared at the ground between my feet. When he finally did speak, his voice was soft, almost careful. "You know," he said, "your uncle wasn't always like that." I didn't look at him, but I listened. "When we were kids," he continued, "he was the brave one. The one who'd climb trees higher than anyone else, who'd jump off roofs into piles of leaves, who'd talk back to teachers when he thought they were wrong." He smiled a little, a sad, distant smile. "He protected me more times than I can count. If someone at school shoved me, he shoved them back twice as hard. If I got lost, he found me. If I cried, he sat with me until I stopped." I had never imagined my dad like that as a younger brother. Vulnerable, protected by someone I had just learned existed. "So what happened?" I asked quietly. He sighed, the sound heavy with years of guilt. "Life," he said. "It got to him in ways it didn't get to me. He made mistakes. And instead of asking for help, he tried to handle everything alone. And when he couldn't, the addictions crept in. He looked down at his hands, turning them over slowly. Addiction changes people. It changes the family around them too. We spent years trying to save him. Years hoping he'd get clean. Years waiting for him to come back to us. But he didn't, I said. My dad shook his head. No. And when he showed up that night, I wasn't looking at my brother. I was looking at a man I didn't recognize. A man who was angry at the world and begging at the same time, and I reacted out of fear. He paused, swallowing hard. Fear that he'd hurt us. Fear that he'd hurt himself. Fear that I couldn't save him anymore. I understood then why the video had haunted him. It wasn't just about protecting me. It was about the shame of seeing himself confronted with the person he used to protect. You were trying to do the right thing, I said. But it didn't feel like the right thing, he replied. And it definitely didn't look like it on camera. I almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, but because the truth had a way of softening edges once it was fully exposed. I don't blame you for being scared, I said. I was scared too. My dad nodded. I know. Another silence passed, but this one felt less suffocating. Softer, like two people trying to rebuild a bridge that had been damaged but not destroyed. After a while, he added, "Your mom loved him too, you know." I could tell, I said. The way she cried in the video? She cried for years after that, he said. She blamed herself for not helping him more, for not welcoming him in that night, for what happened days later. But it wasn't her fault, I said. You know that, right? My dad let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for years. I know, he said. But knowing isn't the same as believing. I leaned back on my palms, looking at the sky as the sun began dipping lower. So, what now? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked at me, with eyes that weren't trying to hide anything anymore. Now we talk, he said. Now we stop pretending everything was perfect. Now we stop letting fear decide what we do or don't tell each other. I nodded slowly. It wasn't closure. Not yet, but it was a beginning. Later that evening, my mom came outside and joined us. She sat on my other side, wiping her eyes, but not trying to hide it. I'm sorry, she said. Not just for the lie, for all the years we asked you to forget something we should have faced as a family. I nodded. I know. We should have trusted you, she said. We should have trusted ourselves. My dad reached over and took her hand. Not dramatically, but gently, like they were rediscovering something they'd lost. You didn't fail me, I said quietly. You were trying to protect me. You just didn't realize that hiding the truth hurts too. My mom nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks again. You deserved better, she said. You deserved honesty. Not a version of the story we curated because we thought you couldn't handle the truth. The honesty in her voice made my chest tighten. I can handle it now, I said. My dad looked at me carefully. Can you handle the rest of it? I turned to him. The rest. He exchanged a glance with my mom, then looked back at me. There are things we never told you about your uncle, he said. About why he showed up that night, about what he said before he left, about what he left behind. A small shiver ran down my spine. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because, he said slowly, some truths don't just change how you see the past. They change how you see yourself. The sky was nearly dark now, the streetlights flickering on one by one. The world around us felt quiet, suspended, like the universe was waiting for what came next. I took a breath. Then tell me, I said. I want to know everything. My dad hesitated, then nodded. We will, he said. But it needs to be done carefully, and not tonight. Why not tonight? I asked. Because, he said, steady and calm, once we tell you the rest, there's no going back. I didn't know what he meant. Not then. But the way he said it sent a chill through me that settled deep in my bones. And for the first time since finding the video, I wondered if the truth I wanted might be heavier than the lies they'd told. I held the Polaroid in my hands for a long time, tracing the edges like it was a relic from a life I somehow lived but never truly knew. My uncle's face wasn't blurry, wasn't faded. He looked alive in a way that made my heart ache. I didn't have memories of him, But seeing him standing beside my parents on the day I was born made something inside me settle. Quietly but deeply. I wasn't alone in my beginning. He was there. He tried. That mattered more than I ever expected it would. My dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes red but steady. "We can't fix the past," he said, "but we can stop running from it." My mom wiped her tears, nodding beside him. "We want you to know everything, not the polished version, not the safe version, the truth." I looked at both of them, really looked hand for the first time in my adult life. I saw not the people who raised me, not the people who lied to protect me, but to human beings who carried guilt, grief, and love in equal measure. To people who made a terrible mistake and were finally trying to make it right. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. I wish I'd known him." My dad's voice cracked. "I wish you had too." We sat there together, the three of us, holding pieces of a story that had been hidden for too long. The lies had been heavy, but the truth unexpectedly felt lighter. That night, after they went to bed, I stayed in the living room with the Polaroid resting beside me. I watched the video one last time, not to reopen wounds, but to close them. This time, I didn't watch it as a scared child or a betrayed adult. I watched it as someone finally able to see the full picture. A broken man begging for help. Two terrified parents trying to protect their child, and a family shattered by choices but still trying to hold itself together. When the video ended, I didn't feel anger. I felt something closer to peace. My parents weren't perfect, my uncle wasn't a ghost, and I wasn't crazy. I finally understood what happened, and understanding, real honest understanding, was enough. It didn't erase the past, it didn't fix everything, but it let me breathe again. It let me forgive. It let me move forward with a story that finally belonged to me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like someone living inside a rewritten memory. I felt like someone who had reclaimed the truth.